Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. We are your destination in the U.S. for coverage of LFC Women. We have been so for over the last few seasons, I would say, but this year we're kind of taking it up another notch to a whole new level. We will have two contributors covering the team in Liverpool, actually, and going to games, providing us live updates, the whole works. Today with us, we will have Lee. Lee, first of all, welcome to the site. We're glad to have you on board. And I think the biggest thing is that we finally will have a contributor that, who will be at the games, right? You'll be following them regularly.
Yeah, I'll be going to every game as much as possible. I'll be pitch side getting the photos and send them straight over so that everyone is informed as it goes along. So I'm looking forward to it, to be fair. I really am.
I'm pretty excited about it. I mean, like I say, I am personally biased for the reasons I stated, like towards like women's soccer. So like follow it really closely. And not to mention, I'm like a junkie of soccer anyway. I'll just watch whatever's on. Doesn't matter what it is. I watch like college games and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I think people have to understand that the game is slightly different, right? I mean, when you watch the men's team and like the sport itself is slightly different. I mean, what is the biggest adjustment that you feel like, I mean, having seen obviously regularly watching both, like people maybe who have not seen it much before or followed them much before, what are the biggest differences that you see?
I think the biggest difference is the girls, when they're playing, I think they feel they have to prove themselves more. They do more tackles. I mean, if they go down after a tackle, they don't roll around on the floor, and that's not a bad reflection in the guys' game. But normally, if a guy gets tackled, they're either rolling around on the floor or they'll just stay down. The girls, they might be injured, but they get straight back up. I know a couple of players from other teams that if you ever saw them on the floor, you knew that they were seriously injured, because even if they just like had a chunk took out the leg, they'd get up and they'd start playing. And it's always good to see players that are like that. I'd rather see football where they just want to play rather than they're playing because it's the done thing. But they personally, I am at times, I think the girls play better than a lot of the lads' teams. I really do. I think they're better than some of the men's teams overall, because they've got a different work ethic, and to see that work ethic, it's just unbelievable.
I kind of liken it. I mean, translating it into the U.S. sports arena over here, I kind of liken it. I mean, mind you, that's changing now, but why a lot of people over here do not follow the pro team, but they'll follow the college team. How much of an impact do you think the European Championship? I mean, in some ways, I think, in our Discord group, when we chat about the tournament, about the games, we find ourselves rooting for England a little bit, not just because, we have like a horse in the race in that sense, but we feel it will kind of help elevate the sport and therefore will translate into Liverpool.
Yeah. Well, I think the championships actually help a lot, and especially the fact that it's actually in England for this one. People are getting to see not always the big stadiums, but stadiums that the girls will play in as well normally. And like the other night, Sweden were playing at Leeds Sports Village. Unfortunately, that's where Manchester United play their home games. But and I think there was like 11,000 people there, but it was better than the 1,000 or the 2,000 that you would get on a normal game. And now people have seen, are looking at teams. They might go, oh, I'll see who they play for in the club teams, and then I'll follow them and so forth. And I think having these championships, it will only make the game better rather than, I mean, some of the officiating isn't great, but you get that in the men's team as well. But
I was going to say, that's no different.
No. There are a few referees that was in the WSL a few years ago, and if I ever saw their name on a team sheet, you knew you was going to have a rubbish game. It was absolutely shocking. But there is one linesman, linesperson. She actually runs the line in the Premier League over here, and she does women's WSL, and that is Sian Massey Ellis. I've never seen her get a decision wrong. whenever she puts her flag up, it's guaranteed it's offside or it's a foul. I've never seen her do a wrong decision.
I mean, that's the thing. I think it's just there's a lot of like nuances to the game. There's a lot of differences that people will have to get used to. I want to get some like historical perspective from you too, because obviously you've been following the team for a long time.
Yeah.
I was joking earlier, but it did become a bit more fashionable now to follow them with their success and like the bus, the tour, and all that kind of stuff. What caused, I guess, demise is the right word, but like the downfall that went to the relegation? Is it more like a neglect on the part of the club? Is it just different circumstances? What do you kind of make that out to?
Personally, I thought they didn't. They got relegated because of COVID. They didn't play enough games, and they was at the bottom of the league. Which, fair play, they get relegated. But in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, there might be a few people that might disagree with me, but I don't think they had the right manager. As much as I liked Vicky Jepson, she was good with the youth, but I don't think she had a great youth and experience, knowledge enough. She took over from Scott, which he didn't do very well. He did well for a couple of seasons, but then he had I won't say a power trip, but he had his favourites, I think, and it didn't work out. They kept him on. Then they got Vicky in, and she was just to steady the ship, I think. And she did all right to start off with, but it was more just youth, and I think that was the downfall. The fact that the youth there mixed with experience, we lost a lot of players, and we had to get other players in, short notice, and it was mostly youth players. And I don't have a problem with youth, but like in the guys' game, you've got to have a balance. You've got to have experience, and you've got to have youth. And if all you've got is youth and a little bit of experience, it's not going to work. And I absolutely, when you go there, when we went to the game against Everton at Anfield, and I'm sat in front of the Kop, to hear that roar when the girls are making a charge towards the Kop end, it was amazing, because everybody that wants to go and watch them will go and watch them. And they did a thing where if you're a season ticket holder, for the men's team, you get into the girls' team for nothing. But I don't think they publicised it enough. And it was only when they did, starting at Anfield, that they turned around and went, okay, well, we'll publicise it. Because I think they had about 20,000 people in. And it was brilliant to hear. It really was. But I think with the downfall of what happened, Matt Beard came in and he totally changed the mentality. It was like he never left. He came in after he'd won two league WSLs back to back. He came back in, and it's like nothing's changed. And they've done a documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Going Back into the WSL, and it actually covers from the minute he started back as manager to when they got promoted. And it was on YouTube actually the other week. I saw it and I was like, wow, there was no editing out. You actually saw whatever he thought, you actually got to hear. And it was really good to see him being brutally honest. If you didn't show up in training and do what you're supposed to do in training, you wasn't going to be playing at the weekend. And that, I think, was pretty much key to the success of that last season.
And now they're kind of like they're back. What do you think? I mean, we were just doing a Premier League show before this in terms of like a recording, and we were talking about teams, that, are coming up to the Premier League and stuff like that. And what do you expect in terms of like how much movement? They've already had some signings, but
yeah.
We'll have a future episode where we kind of like go more into the squad and like talk about specific players. But in general, what do you expect? Is it more about taking the next step and kind of establishing themselves, or is it possible to like make a run right away? Because I think the expectations will vary.
I think expectations will be, because we did so well in the Championship, they'll want us to carry on and hopefully dominate in the WSL. My personal opinion is, now that they've got Shanice van der Sanden back, they will do really well, because she is an absolute amazing player. And I think starting out now, the team that they've got now, they've got a few players back what they had before, and they've got new players. And I genuinely think the expectation is going to be there, and I think they will do well. But I think they might be third or fourth this season. But the following season, I think the charge will be there, and they'll go for the title.
You think like the reaction in terms of like fan attendance and stuff will improve drastically? And I would think for a team like that, the impact of the fans, let's face it, there are days where, I mean, Anfield is always packed for the men's team, right?
Yeah.
But there are days where you really feel like the team, like the fans feel the team needs them. And you kind of have those special days where really you can see the fans carrying the team across. And there are days where everybody's kind of enjoying the ride because, the team starts out good and stuff like that. I feel like in the women's team, when they're not used to larger crowds, having that crowd, having that noise probably has double the impact.
Yeah. It helps sometimes, but it's also, like it can be hinders. Really? But when they do the home team, before they got relegated, the home team's attendance when they were playing at home was like 800, sometimes 1,000, depending. If they were playing Everton, they'd get a bit more, or Manchester United, they get a bit more. But I think since, like I say, Matt Beard's come on board, I think the attendances, because they know the quality of his coaching and generally just an all-round great person, I think the attendances, and especially after the Euros, although we haven't got many players in the European teams that are there, but I do think the attendances will go up, and it'll only get better, but it can be a bit intimidating, I think, especially when you're not used to the big ones. But the games such as against Everton or Manchester United, I think if they was to be played at Anfield, they'd fill it, and it'd be unbelievable. Because I was looking at some of the attendances for Manchester United when they first came in. They were getting over 2,000 people per game, home and away. Now I'll travel to the end of the country to go watch them, but there are some people that physically can't or wouldn't be able to do it. And to me, as long as I can get to see it, I don't really mind. But I think the big attendances will be a little bit of an issue to start off with because they won't be used to it. But as it gets on, I think they'll get used to it, and it won't affect them. It'll spur them on like it does the guys. It's the 12th man when they're cheering the guys. If we need to dig deep, and the crowd get behind them, that can only get better. I think we'll do well with that.
Do you sense? I mean, obviously, it goes without saying we have the best fans in the world. Do you sense any difference between the sport for the men's team and the sport of women's team in terms of like patience for the game on the field, or being supportive, or like the turning points where like the never boos, I guess, but like you can sometimes like have a bad pass and kind of like hear the rumblings.
Yeah.
Does it take longer almost like in the women's games, or would you say it's about the same?
I'd say it's a bit longer, to be fair. They don't really get, the fans on the back as much, unless it's someone who they really don't like and they're playing. Because there are some players that over the last 2 seasons that, personally, in my opinion, I don't think should have been there. They was, and it's like, if they're fighting for the place, I'm sure there'd be somebody else that would fill that spot before them. But there are some that that they're fine, but they don't get on your back as much in the girls' side as they do in the guys. But I think that's just because the girls are more accessible when it comes to the end of the game. People wait till the end of the game, and the girls will come over to the fans and start signing stuff. And they're there for a good 20, 30 minutes, signing things, getting selfies with people. You don't see that with the guys as much. You don't see them going to the fans if they've, at Anfield and having selfies with people and stuff like that. It's normally they'll point to the family or they'll wave to the crowd in general. And that's the difference, I think, between the guys and the girls. The girls are more accessible, and they can pretty much ask the girls to, go over to see the fans, and they'll do it. But the guys, it's like, well, we're quite busy. We've either just won or we've just lost. We don't really want to be involved in that kind of thing. Just go straight back to the dressing room. But the girls, they stick around, and they really do appreciate the fans. There was one fan just the other day, actually. She was an Arsenal fan, but she was known by quite a lot of people, quite a lot of fans from around the country, and she died. And everybody has got a story about her and a photo with her, and they've been posting it all over social media, because it was really sad to see, because she used to follow Arsenal everywhere. So
I think it's almost like a bigger sense of community, because I think everyone, regardless of the team they're supporting, if they're following like the women's teams, they want to grow the entire thing. It's not just grow our club. You know, like if, you know, your men's team, you don't care if, you know, I don't know, like Newcastle is growing their fan base or anything like that, you know, the hell with them, you know. But, you know, I think it's a totally different, because everybody almost like shares that ultimate goal of improving the sport. And I think it comes from, you're right. I feel like, and honestly, any US sports fan, I know I'm bashing a lot about like US sports over here, but, you know, coming from Europe, there's like a huge differences that you see. And one thing I really like about the Premier League is, and soccer in general, I think over there in Europe, is the respect the fans get from players. And yeah, I mean, you know, the men's team might not be going around, you know, but, you know, like thanking the fans, win or lose and stuff like that, you know, like kind of like almost like acknowledging the fans. I mean, I've been to games here where, you know, like NBA or something like that, game is over, they just walk out. I was like, but they just freaking left. Like, what? I guess we're leaving too, you know. So, and you know, it's not like they're gonna go around and shake everybody's hand, but it just does not feel, I feel like, you know, like the soccer fans get more appreciation from the people playing the game compared to like some of like the other pro sports here. And I think, you know, obviously these guys can't go around and sign like, you know, 30,000 stuff. But I think even as simple as going over to away fans and thanking them for coming, I think it's like a huge respect to, like, you know, to the fans that are coming over there. I just love seeing that, mainly because you don't see it a lot over here, to be honest with you. You may see it like, you know, like a post-match, like thanking fans and stuff like that, but physical. So like to the point where when a player does it, it hits, you know, like makes it a real, because it's not very common, and that's not really how it should be.
Well, over here, when the girls do it, I think, who was it? Missy Bokers, she being the Scouser in the team, she actually, you know, appreciates, and she does a lot of signings, and she does, you know, appearances when needed, and things like that. She's brilliant. She really is. I remember a time where I went down to the Tottenham game, and it was in London, and she wasn't playing. And whenever I saw her, she'd wave to us, and I was pitch side. She was in the centre circle, and she was walking along, and the sprinkler just went off, and she saw us. And as she saw us, she was walking through the sprinkler, and she just waved at us, and it's like she acknowledged us. Do you know what I mean? And at that time, she'd only seen me a few times, but whenever if she saw us, or we talked on social media like Instagram, where I'd send her a few photos, it's really good, because the rapport you get with the players, it's unbelievable. Because I mean, one of my favourite players is Leanne Robe. I think she's amazing. I really do. I think coming into the team, and yeah, it's not an easy team to keep your place. And if you keep your place, you know, I like fighting for your position. And I think the players that they've got now that are fighting for the position, they, at the end of the game, I mean, you can't get better than Rachel Furness, Ode Fernie, when she, I mean, unfortunately, Ireland didn't do very well in the Euros, but she would go over to the fans and things like that. Do you know what I mean? It's players like that they bring in, and you just see they get as much out of it as what the fans get out of it, and it's unbelievable to see. I mean, in 2018, I went to an NFL game in Florida. I went to go watch the Bucks, and it was against the Browns. I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to go before Tom Brady got there, so I can say that I went to watch before Brady was there. But we actually enjoyed the interaction there that obviously we didn't get to see the players, but the fans' interaction with other fans, it was unbelievable. I'd never seen that kind of interaction before. I mean, there was a guy who I didn't know, and because I got a Bucks jersey on, interesting because he come up and talked to us, and it's like, oh, you're not from here? No, I'm not from here. I'm from England. I'm from England, and it was just really good to see that kind of interaction. And like over here, we get that interaction, but it's mostly with the players. So, but different sports.
I think players over there, especially for the women's side, they kind of see themselves more of like an ambassador of the sport in general to be able to push it. So that obviously is a big reason of it. And I talk a lot of crap, but I will say this: when you do watch the sports here, it's a lot different atmosphere in terms of like a mix and match. It's not as hardcore. Like you can go to I mean, they could have been, I'm sure there were like Cleveland Brown fans around you, and they'd be like, everybody says, I remember like the first game I went to, the Bears game, I think it was Saints, and there was like a couple of Saints. I'm like, well, they're asking for it, because I'm used to, like soccer games back home in like Turkey, like Fenerbahce, or like, like in England when I went to games there. And you don't want to be there, man. Like this is, you're in the wrong section, bro. You're not going to make it. I just kind of like the fact that it's not as hardcore, maybe. Well, I mean, you might get heckled and like joked and stuff like that, but well, at least until the third quarter, people start getting drunk. It's usually a lot more friendlier, and it's like a more positive atmosphere. So I'll give them that. I think they don't take it to the extreme where people can sit with each other. I always hear, my grandfather, I always like brag about him. He was like one of the top players of ever, like for Fenerbahce. And I know like they always said in the old days, the fans used to sit together, like, Fenerbahce and Galatasaray fans. I mean, now there's really like literally a row of like cops sitting in between them, like 10 deep, which is not nice to see either, so that's one thing about, I think, American sports that's better. But so I've slammed him enough, so I'll give him some credit over here. So you mentioned, so I do want to emphasize that you mentioned some photos, and American Scouser fans will be glad to hear not only we're gonna get like direct updates from the fields, but we're also gonna get our own high-end photos directly from the games, because you're Mr. Photo.
Yes, I am. I'm going to be at majority of the games. In October, I won't be at many because I'm actually over in America for a couple of weeks. But I'm going to be getting photos, and I'll send them straight over. If people score, if players score, I'll get the photos and I'll send them straight over so that they can go out on your social media. And after the games, if I can get photos of them, and if me and Amy are working together where she can try and get a couple of words from them and get a photo from them, we'll send them straight over. Normally, during a game, I can take over 2,000 photos, and within an hour of the game finishing, they're all edited, the ones that I'm going to use, and they're all out to whoever needs them. So you'll be very up to date. Like I say, post them out during the game, post them out after the game, and then a couple of days after, putting things out there so that people can see. Might even do a video like of how we're getting into the stadium, things like that, so people can actually experience the journey into the stadium. I know that sounds weird, but from where I'm going to be sat and where the fans are going to be sat, there's a bit of there's a couple of seats, but my view will be best in the house kind of view. I won't have anybody in front of me apart from players when they're running with a ball, which I can't wait to get back and get some photos, because I absolutely love the team, and I think getting them as they are, as it happens, and getting them out there, it's just going to be like the guys, if ever they score, they get the photos out there, and so that's what we're going to do for the girls.
I mean, that's, like the point of view experience is huge to fans, especially in the US here, because as much as we love the team, as much as we all want to, not everyone, or I would say at least a huge majority, cannot make the trip to Anfield or like to a women's game. And because it's, it's a costly trip. It makes American sports games affordable. Let's put it that way. So, so that's definitely awesome to have. And that's some mighty fast editing, by the way. I can't freaking save 3 files in an hour. People don't do that. Well, Lee, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be hearing a lot from you throughout the season. And keep your eye on American Scouser, definitely our social media and our YouTube channel over here as we give regular updates on LFC Women. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.